The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Hooray for Hollywood! That's gooey bally-hooly Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan.
And any shop girl can be a top girl if she pleases the tired businessman.
Hooray for Hollywood! You may be homely in your name.
Bonjour maman. Tout le monde va bien. Georgette sait compter jusqu'à 25.
24, 25, 42.
Et Erika
Fanny, t'es où?
n'est plus du tout collante.
Fanny!
On t'embrasse très très fort. On voudrait te revoir.
Mussolini a été arrêté?
La guerre est bientôt finie, on va rentrer chez nous.
Non, c'est pas bon. Si les Italiens ne sont plus avec les Allemands, ça veut dire que les Allemands vont les foutre dehors et prendre leur place. Tous les enfants doivent partir le plus vite possible.
Comment tu t'appelles?
Non, tu t'appelles Marcel Beaumont. Maintenant, c'est Fanny, votre chef.
Ne montre jamais ta peur, Fanny. Jamais. Toi, t'as la tête dure. Et c'est bien d'avoir la tête dure. C'est pour ça que tu vas y arriver.
On peut pas passer en Suisse tout seul. C'est trop risqué.
Avec mon argent, on pourrait payer un passeur.
Tu veux faire confiance à qui?
On pourra rejouer au jeu des billets.
Vous acceptez de nous garder un peu?
Pour cette nuit, ça va, mais demain matin, il faudra partir.
C'est toi qui avais raison, on peut compter que sur nous. On est malins et on est nombreux. Tu manges la myrtille, ensuite tu penses au...
Ah oui, je sais, au moche.
Pas au moche, au boche.
Be an actor, see Mr. Factor, you make your kisser look good.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's...
All right. And the answer to the question that several people ask me, no, Bugs Bunny is not Jewish. Okay. Fiddler on the Roof, the documentary. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I like the documentary a lot, and we can certainly talk about it. I think I learned more watching this documentary about, you know, not thinking about what the show is about. I've seen it many times. I think we had sent out a text about 2 weeks ago that the movie just happened to be on. I hope you had a chance to see the film or tape the film. It was on Turner Classic. Let's talk a little bit about the documentary, about the show, about the movie. Let's open it up. Maybe at the very end, I want to show you a clip of something else. I promise, not a cartoon. But let's talk first the documentary. The documentary was co-written and directed by a sort of a young director who's done three things, and I thought they were fascinating. One is Fiddler. He had done a documentary called Under Fire about an infantryman in World War II who smuggled a camera to the front and took first-person video of the war as he saw it. Tony Vaccaro was his name. And he did a documentary about the Morgenthau family.
Michael, it's hard to hear you a little.
How's this, better?
A little better, yeah, thanks.
Okay. He did a documentary about the three generations of the Morgenthau family. But the woman who co-wrote this with him worked on all of those. And she did another documentary that if you can find it, I recommend it. It's called The Sit-In. And what was The Sit-In? This is a documentary about February 1968 when Harry Belafonte emceed The Tonight Show for a week as a guest host. It was the first African American who ever emceed a late night TV talk show for a week. So it's called The Sit-In, and it's very good. First of all, anytime you're watching Harry Belafonte, you're ahead of the game. So we come to this particular documentary. You saw it was in memory of Hal Prince. Prince and Jerry Rabinowitz worked on this show. You know him as Jerome Robbins, and he's an interesting character in this piece for what he was, for what he did, for his time in front of the committee, naming names, a gay man on Broadway and in Hollywood who was basically threatened by the House Un-American Activities Committee that would be revealed unless he gave in and told names. So there's sort of a lot of politic going on. The show itself opened in 1964. It ran for 3,242 performances. That's almost 10 years. It was the longest running show at that time for 25 years. And there were basically on Broadway 3 Tevias. Most of us always think of Zero Mostel, Herschel Bernardi, and Leonard Nimoy were basically the 3 Tevias through most of that run. You know, there's a comment in the documentary, and it reminded me of I Love Lucy, which was every day somewhere in the world, there's an I Love Lucy rerun. Every single day in the world, Fiddler on the Roof is being put on someplace around the world. You saw the Japanese in particular sort of took a liking to the notion of tradition, obviously their own and not necessarily ours, and they loved the show. So the show runs, the show's very successful, and now it comes time to make the movie. Well, the movie comes out in 1971, and if you sort of think about Hollywood, at the end of the 60s, it's basically the end of the studio system. You know, you have Easy Rider, and you have The Graduate, and you have all of these sort of small movies, and out comes this big musical about pogroms and about families in Russia and being forced to leave and daughters getting married and marrying in and out of religion and a whole host of things. And so there's a real question. And obviously, you know, the question has always been in Hollywood, why not Zero Mostel? Norman Jewison, who had the great line about, I want you to know I'm not Jewish, you know, was a surprise basically to the entire studio system at the time. You know, he wanted someone else. First of all, Jerome Robbins, and Mostel fought the entire run of the play. Do you remember, as an aside, do you remember we saw the movie The Front? Woody Allen was in it and Zero Mostel. Do you remember Woody Allen, sort of the boss of the studio that they were putting on the TV show, was a guy who was busy, sort of worked with the committee, the House Un-American Activities Committee. And Zero Mostel's character, every time he came in, he had something to say to that producer. That's exactly what was going on with Jerome Robbins. Every chance he got, he sort of put Jerome Robbins down. And every chance Jerome Robbins got, he sort of put it on Zero Mostel. However, to Robbins' credit, he choreographed and directed an incredible show. And if you watch the film, you'll sort of see the remnants of that. So it comes time to make the movie, and the movie is the biggest grossing movie of 1971. What is it against? A Clockwork Orange, Shaft, were 2 of the movies, The French Connection. So there are big films. This film becomes incredibly successful. So when it comes time to cast, who do they go to? Orson Welles, Anthony Quinn, Marlon Brando. They all turned down the role, and who wanted it? Frank Sinatra and Danny Kaye, who might have been interesting in another way, but they turned him down. Anne Bancroft was offered the role as Golda, and she turned it down. She felt that Tevia's character was just too big. When you watch the documentary, I guess the thing that stands out to me is about sort of the world and the politic and how it changed as the show came out in the 60s, and then the whole sort of feminist movement and, you know, activism the war in Israel, and the different view of Jews and Jewish people. So there's a lot sort of background. The other irony was Anatevka. Where is Anatevka of all places? There we are in the Ukraine. It has some sort of irony to it. When it came time to film the movie, they shot in Yugoslavia. Marshal Tito, for some reason, loved the show. Don't ask me why, but that's where they were allowed to ultimately make the movie. So, you know, the show is incredibly successful. You saw a lot of sort of behind the scenes about how a show gets written, how songs are added, how songs are left out. You know, they came to Detroit. You heard their response. The story is just the story about pogroms and nothing very interesting. The songs are not memorable. So much for Detroit and the critics. So we come to the movie. You know, both the movie and the show sort of stand as testaments to a lot of things. One sort of interesting aside, if you remember Tevye, he's always sort of pulling the wagon. Why? Because when it was first staged on Broadway, the horse couldn't have a real horse moving back and forth on the stage. And so Tevye himself pulled the wagon. The other piece is, I think that the original name of the painting, by the way, it's not Fiddler on the Roof by Chagall. I think it's The Dead Man. And it's the fiddler playing with a funeral going on below. And that's really the reference that Tevye makes to his plight. You know, so having said that, let's sort of open it up if we can. At the very end of this, I want to show you something else, by the way, to something from another show, because it struck me that, you know, we talk about musicals, Fiddler as a great musical. I was thinking of my favorite show, which I'll tell you later, but I thought there are 3 killings, a sexual assault, police brutality, and it's one of the great musicals of all time, actually by several of these same characters. So having said that, welcome everybody. It feels like it's been a long time since I've seen you folks. Let's open it up, see what we got.
Okay, we'll start with the Fredmans, and anybody else who wants to talk, let me know in the chat or raise your hand or wave or whatever you want to do.
Is that Rebecca and Leonard? Hello. Got to unmute. I guess.
Yes.
Oh, Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello.
Those the Fredmans and the Fredmans.
I was struck by the foreign language productions and also by the Yiddish language production, which I thought was
Joel
wonderful.
Grey directing it, of all people.
Yeah, and there was a great deal that I didn't know about the making of the play and the real themes, and I found it wonderfully evocative, and I found it really informative. This was a really wonderful documentary. I'm glad you directed us to that. Thank you.
My pleasure. Essia, you want to say something?
No.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
You too, always.
Who's next?
Okay.
I'm going to take next. Just Diane wanted to say something, but first, you said something about the reviews from Detroit. Remember that they said in response to that, they kept tweaking. So, you know, they may have been bad in Detroit. We don't have a recording of that. But clearly, they figured out how to get it right.
They actually changed some of the songs also after that. They added Do You Love Me song.
Yeah.
I thought the song about the Messiah was an interesting thing, that it was once there and that it was omitted after Detroit.
Yeah.
Dan?
Okay. 2 things struck me in addition to what already has been said. One is the inference again that Zero Mostel was investigated in the 40s. And I felt that was important because that was something that not everybody's aware of. We are, because we saw a couple of other films. The other thing is Topol was in the movie, but he also played, and I remember seeing him in the Pantages. And
he did London and the Touring Company also.
Okay, so that's why I saw him at the Pantages. It was for Broadway. But I also saw the movie. And what I really liked was them talking about in the movie that they wanted a different person, an Israeli in particular. And why? Because historically, they wanted somebody who had a different personality and a different history. You know, so in addition to talking about the international and the Yiddish and Japanese, whatever, they reframed Topol's character. And I thought, Tevye, I'm sorry, Tevye, Topol as Tevye. And the other piece, which I found absolutely fascinating, is that he had tooth and gum problems during part of the filming, right, and he still did it.
The show must go on.
Right,
you know,
right.
I want to just come back to two things that you said very quickly. One, remember the studio first went after Marlon Brando. So much for they have to have an Israeli. So if Brando had said yes, he would have been Tevye. Orson Welles would have been Tevye. You know, so it's sort of interesting how the studio sort of reframes history is one thing. The other thing was, if you want to see something fascinating, see if you can track down when Zero Mostel testified in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee. They asked him who you work for, 20th century. And he said, well, if they support you, it was probably 19th century. Wait a second. I work for 18th. No, I think 17th century Fox. I mean, he was right there with him. And he, like many others, Lee Grant and many others, paid the price for a very long time. And he was very bitter about it.
Yeah. None?
Yep. That was basically, I just thought the actors and actresses were phenomenal. And Tevye, to me, was a very powerful role.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of hands up.
Okay, next we'll go to Lorraine and Alan, immediately followed by Larry and Diane.
Hi, Gabriella. Hi, Gerald, Miriam. We'll get you.
Okay, the first thing that struck me was this took place in 1905. And that's when my four grandparents came to the United States from what was then Belarusia, which was, I guess, who knows where the boundaries were. Could have been what is today Ukraine. I don't know.
Belarus.
But you know, Belarus is now Belarus. Okay. In the movie version, Topol, the actual age was 36.
Yeah, he was supposed to be 50.
And Model, who was the oldest son, was Leonard Fry, and he was 37. And the other thing, when I saw it in the 60s as a play, and I saw it another time as a play, and I saw it in Vegas, and then I saw the movie. But the first time I saw it, watching the opening scene when they're singing Tradition, I mean, that was just, to me, that was just amazing. How it went on for 10 or 15 minutes, and I thought that was just the most beautiful thing I almost ever saw. And I still remember my feeling when I saw it, and I thought that was great. And to me, that just started the play off perfectly. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the Hermans.
So, Michael, like you, I was really struck by the discussion of the universality of the themes in it, because I have to admit that I hadn't ever thought about it like that. And in fact, my brother-in-law, who is not Jewish and is a band director, actually was a musical director for a high school version in a very small town in kind of semi-rural Washington state. And I couldn't figure out why, why they would choose that. But when I started thinking about this notion of parents protecting their female children, about girls needing protection. So I'm watching right now The Gilded Age, which takes place somewhat before this, but in a very different way. the theme is the same theme about parents trying to protect their daughters. And when you start looking at a lot of shows, period, especially period pieces, there's a lot of that. And I must admit, I never picked it up until the discussion.
I have one comment based upon watching this wonderful documentary. I know we often say, at least I will often say, I've seen that, but I'm struck by how different a play or even a film can be depending upon the actor, the director, etc. It's more true with plays because the casts change and the productions change. And it makes me think that I should never say again, especially about a play, I've seen that. I've seen that production with that particular actor and that particular director, because now it makes me want to see a variety of productions of this play and many others, because we subscribe to the Amundsen series. And sometimes I'll think, well, I already saw that one, but I shouldn't think that. I should say, I want to see this version.
Yeah.
If you like music.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, Gabriella Litoff.
Hello, Gabriella.
Unmute.
I was, first of all, I want to say I really was gobsmacked by your introduction. I thought that was horrible. And I love cartoons, so that, it's a nostalgia for when I was a kid. We had double features and we always had cartoons and we had the newsreels, and we didn't have these obnoxious, long, never-ending commercials, for which reason I rarely go to the movies now. I actually stream things much more I can than that. But anyway, that segues into what I feel is the main theme. And I think everybody, I mean, that's very simple enough, is longing for things to be like the thing in Over the Rainbow, longing for romance, longing for more ease and more respect, longing for friendship, like with the Mujiks when they were dancing, it's just longing for something that you think, and longing for home, being comfortable in that place and wishing it could be there forever. I recently watched a movie called Belfast, which is fabulous, but that was part of it too, that people wanted things to stay the way they were and they couldn't. And that's, I think, a great part of the movie, that there's constant change, and we long for the tradition and for the times when we knew who we were and who everybody else was.
Yeah. No argument there, Gabriella.
Thanks again for doing this. I can never thank you enough, Michael.
This is a busman's holiday for me. This is a pleasure talking about movies.
Okay, thank you. Next, Tova Sunshine.
Hello, Tova.
Hi. Well, I guess I sort of have a salad bowl of different reflections. I super enjoyed it. Carl and I watched. We did tape the Turner movie and watched most of it. We didn't quite get through the entire thing, but I remembered the ending, of course. As other people have commented, I'm really struck by the international appeal of it, and the way that these values that were so deeply embedded in our culture resonate so well with other cultures and other peoples. And I'm going to put it out as a question, but I couldn't help reflecting, given the comment that every day there's a production of it being put on somewhere, what, if any, measurable impact in terms of people's attitude towards Jews and Jewish culture has this movie and the stage productions of it had, being present in so many cultures, and not just present, but being performed. And when you perform it, when students perform it, or amateur theatrical productions perform it, you're engaging in that culture in a very deep way. And I just something I'm finding myself thinking about, the intangible of the impact of something like this on a worldwide basis. So that was one reflection I had. The other was just an interesting coincidence that Carl and I just happened to see the Lehman trilogy at the Amundsen on Thursday. And I'm not comparing the two because there's major differences between them, but there's a great similarity in that the Lehman trilogy was steeped in Jewish reference and Jewish culture. And yet we were sitting in a pretty packed house of people at the Amundsen that were clearly not majority Jews. There were Jews there clearly, but, and it got a rousing reception. And we were also very impressed by it. And as I was watching it, I sort of had the same, to what degree is the power of this penetrating for people who have no idea what a mezuzah is, or what it means when somebody reaches up to a doorpost and appears to kiss something, or, you know, all of these things that were clear. And the same thing kind of applies to this, that somehow through the particularity of that, the universality of Fiddler clearly speaks with really resonant tones. And that I find quite fascinating. Oh, that's it.
I don't have an answer to your first question, but the second one, I worked in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Karen worked in Harlem in 1968. And it was very interesting when you saw the black production, the kids putting on the show,
yeah, that was
and
amazing.
they owned that show.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so you would hope that there's some understanding that comes with it.
Right. Well, that's what I mean, because there's such that investment that, I mean, it's not just watching, it's not just reading, it's embodying.
It's not just putting South Pacific or Oklahoma on, as every high school does.
Right.
Okay, next we'll go to the Friedmans, please.
Hi, I really enjoyed this documentary very much. It was so interesting to see the different productions over the years and the different actors, and I especially liked hearing about how, you know, it had such worldwide appeal, and so in different languages it's been performed and continues to be performed. We heard a little bit of Japanese and Yiddish. I would have liked to have heard some more languages or seen a little bit more. I did like that we saw some of the school productions. I was going to comment, a number of years ago, I saw the Jewish Women's Repertory Theater perform it. So that's an all-women cast performing for an all-women audience. So that was also very, very interesting to see that. And the last comment I had was, it was so poignant seeing Ukraine and the tying in, and, you know, of the area, and then even the, you know, the Anatevka recreation there, that was just so poignant at this point in time, but really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was surprised at how moving it was. I mean, obviously I'd know the story, seen it several times, but I did a little research on the new Anatevka, and it turns out that was created in 2014 for the refugees from the Donbass region who were leaving there. So that they set up this town, as a rabbi set up the town there, but it was basically intended to be a Jewish town for these Jewish refugees.
You kind of wonder what shape it's in now.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go to Joel Warren, please.
For his close-up. Where are you, Joel? Hello, Joel, you're muted, but we can see you, we can't hear you.
Story of my life.
Welcome to the club.
Thanks so much. First of all, as a documentary, as a film, oh, it's wonderful. I mean, what else can you say? It just hits everything. It's informative, it's interesting, It's deep. I mean, it's just hits anything you could want to hit in terms of emotions and information and behind the scenes stuff. It's just tremendous. And what occurred to me also was put yourself back there in 1963. Somebody comes to you, here's a story about Jews in Russia and the pogroms. And the end of the story, they're destroyed and have to leave their town. You know, sounds great. It sounds like a really great musical. No, it wouldn't be put on by anybody.
Right.
And what's interesting, it shows that nobody knows what's going to be a hit, what's not going to be a hit. And the other side of the coin, of course, is the producers, where they put on what they're sure is going to be a guaranteed flop. And that doesn't happen either. So the best laid plans. I just want to say thank you for the movie. Thank you also for making me very popular with certain people who now think I have wonderful taste, and for recommending this documentary that they enjoyed so much. And one last thing. Somebody remember talking about going to see Topol. He came through LA twice, once at the Dorothy Chandler, once at the Pantages. I went twice, and both times turned out to be a night Topol was being played by an understudy. I missed him twice. First time I walked out, I didn't see it. Second time, I said, okay, I'll watch the understudy. I've never seen him play before, and he was really good. So there you go. Sad story from Warren.
You have to watch the movie. You'll see Topol.
Yeah. It's also interesting if you see him younger, if you see any of his old Israeli movies, how different he looked. He was totally different. Well, he's a wonderful actor, but
yeah.
When you see him without the beard and his hair slicked back and he's 30 years old, it's just, you can't really relate to this is Topol. This is the Topol, it's Tevye.
Now, just an aside to the group, did you not love Lin-Manuel Miranda? If you didn't love him before, when I was watching it, I thought, what a mensch this guy is. Aside from being brilliant, aside from that, when you saw that at his wedding, I thought, what a menschy guy. There's something so good, kind about him. So just wonderful.
I was so jealous I wasn't at that wedding. It sounds like it was.
Right? Every time I see him speak, he's always interesting and thoughtful. And then you go see Hamilton and you realize how brilliant that man really is.
And did you see him in Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David?
Yes, he's funny. He has a great sense of humor about himself. He doesn't take himself seriously, but boy, he should.
He's just good. That's all you can say.
He really is. He really is.
Okay, thank you. Just to make Bob happy, next will be Miriam and Joe, followed by the Bacharachs, then myself, then Karen Cass, and then the Greens. So Miriam and Joe, you're up. And Tova on a second round later.
So I felt like when I was watching the documentary, I felt like I was taking a warm bath. It was so emotional and just so beautiful. I was struck by two things. First of all, the question that was asked by the producer in Japan and about whether this movie or this play was popular in the United States, and really how could it be?
Right.
Because it's so very Japanese. And that really spoke volumes about the universality. And I was also going to comment on Miranda and how, if I've heard it right, he got his start as a member of the chorus in a production of Fiddler.
That was his 6th grade play.
Yeah. I mean, it was really true.
Even then.
Yeah.
I thought he said he was the butcher.
Oh, I don't know. I thought they said the chorus. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. Yeah.
Didn't he even show you? He sang a little and remembered his movements.
Well, one of the most interesting parts, how they prepare a play. Because there's what they call a play doctor. They showed it in Detroit first, and they changed songs. Well, that's what happens, in a Broadway show. They show it someplace else, someplace out of town. And then what they call a play doctor You know, says, well, you take this song out, you put this song in. My great uncle was a play doctor at one time in Hollywood, but that's how they do it.
Wait, did your great uncle play doctor, or he was a play doctor?
He was a play doctor. He worked with Steve Burroughs.
Just checking. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to show you before we end tonight. I'm going to show you a behind-the-scenes piece from a show, which I think you'll like. But okay, I couldn't help that bad joke, Joe. I'm sorry.
Did you see Norm Green's comment? The sons. That was Lin-Manuel. Yeah. Terrific.
Okay, let's move on to the Bacharachs, please.
Hey,
Gary, a couple things. I'm glad that Norm. Sorry, I interrupted you.
We just said
hi. Okay, okay. I'm glad, Norm, you're getting bored. Your boredom turns out to be so wonderful. I love what you just did in the beginning. So that was a start. My comment is the following. I've seen Fiddler on the Roof many times, and we saw it a few years ago at where did we see it? The Lemley. And I saw it again with you know, it's not sad again, but I saw that this documentary. And what I was impressed with, I started crying when Havala was leaving. Now, why does it hit me now? I was bawling pretty hard, and I kind of could figure it out well, but I didn't expect that to hit from a doctor for a small little subsect of the show, which wasn't even the whole power. But that just to me shows the power of this film. That was my comment.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm next, then Karen Cass, then Norm Green, and then we'll go back to Till the Sunshine. Okay, so let's get a little serious here, Michael. I, like lots of other people, in sometime between April 19th and June 5th of 1966, went to see Fiddler on the Roof when the LA Civic Light Opera presented it, starring Luther Adler, okay? And like lots of other people, I walked out of that theater bitty bumming and just in heaven and loving all the music and what have you. But now I'm 51 years older, gone for a lot of life experiences, including 5 years as a high crisis intervention hotline counselor. And while some of the songs like To Life and Sunrise, Sunset and the Sabbath Prayer, you know, still make me laugh and cry and love every moment of it, some of the other songs make me cringe and wonder, you know, what were they thinking, okay? So let's start a little bit on the lighter side, Michael. In the song tradition, so Tevye says, and I've got the words here, hang on a second. Night and day, he must scramble for a living to feed a wife and children and say his daily prayers. That's the papa, okay? And then in the next stanza, the mama says, who must raise the family and run the house so papa's free to read the holy books. Now, if the guy's working night and day, and I'm wondering if he got time and a half, by the way, when does he have time to, you know, read the holy books? And, you know, it's something to think about. I've for 2 years been trying to learn my bar mitzvah Haftorah, but I can't get around to it because I'm doing all these volunteer jobs for Beth Am like this thing. Okay. Now let's move on to Matchmaker. All right. Okay. Matchmaker. Chava, I found him. Will you be a lucky bride? He's handsome. He's tall. That is from side to side. You've heard he has a temper. He'll beat you every night, but only when he's sober. So you're all right. Okay. Now, in my mind, again, with 51 years of life experience and everything else I've gone through, I read that sentence and here we got fat shaming, domestic abuse, and alcoholism all in one shot. Okay. Is that not something to think about in, you know, the next time you go through this? And then lastly, the song, If I Were a Rich Man. Okay. All day long, I bitty bum, wouldn't have to work hard. Now that one strikes me as kind of strange too, because I don't know what kind of circles a lot of you people have been around, but in my 5 decades, especially in the entertainment business, I was around, worked for, and interacted with a lot of rich people. And the last thing those people did was bitty bitty bum. They were at their desks longer than regular people. They had a lot of money. They could have walked away with their stock options and all that other jazz. But the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos and, you know, the Steve Ballmers, they keep coming back for more and more and more. So it just doesn't seem human nature to, even though you may amass a lot of wealth, that basically you'll want to spend your day just bitty bitty bumming. I'm going to hand it over now to Karen Cass.
Norm, you need to watch some more cartoons.
I will. I got three DVDs from the library. I'm going through them.
And less volunteer work.
Norm, unlike you, I sat there, and maybe because I'm older, I'm saying, my kids are going to have to sit down with me and watch this. I was taken right back to the Bronx and Long Beach, Long Island, and my grandparents and all the Judaism of whatever was going on. I was just, and then, so I saw my son and I said, did you ever see Fiddler? Did you ever see it? Because if you didn't, we're going to see it. Okay, Mom, fine.
It was a punishment.
What? You're going to be there with me, Michael? I don't know. Okay. You can watch alone. Not really, but it just took me to a place of history and gratitude that when we moved here, we found Beth Am. We have a community of people that we see every week. It was not at all criticized. And I thought the making of it and all of that was really very interesting, and the kids singing and all of that. I loved the whole deal. And Norm, I'm sorry that you had such negativity in your response on some level. I get it, but I just didn't go there. I could have. I just sat back and watched the movie. Just saying.
You know, I'm going to make this real short, but about something you said, Norm, which is we could do a night of I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No. 7.5 cents doesn't sound like a heck of a lot. You know, we could do the history of musical theater and how some stories and some songs really, you know, stand the test of times, and others are dated from, you know, when they're written 65 years ago, the world has changed. You know, just so I'll leave it at that.
Next,
Green. A second. I think more to the point, this is all the mindset of somebody in 1905, not even 1961, and certainly not 2020 something.
Yes, it reflects something from 100 and some odd years ago. And it's musical theater, by the way. It is a musical.
Well, Bob, you know, if I can reply to you, you know, in the song tradition, he says, at 3, I started Hebrew school. At 10, I learned a trade. They don't tell you that by the time you were 48, you were dead. So, okay, think about that. All right, Norm Green,
Thank
please.
God Norm Gar did not write this musical.
68 is the new 48.
There you go.
Shalom Aleicham's audience and Shalom Aleichem himself were socialists, and they, of course, perceived the rich as mostly being the idle rich. And as many of us know, the wealthy among us often perceive the poor as being the idle poor and undeserving. Both are usually not accurate.
But you're quoting Finian's Rainbow now.
Yes. I first saw the musical in the mid-'60s when it came to the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. My parents were season tickets holders and they loved it. So right afterwards, they bought tickets for my grandmother and me. I don't remember if my sister went also. It was probably the first time I went to a professional production of a play that was not geared to children, although I'm not sure. But it was quite a spectacle. I saw it, of course, many times since. I was at the Orange County opening of the movie because I was in college at the time in Orange County. And it was really funny because we're in a theater that is simply filled with Jews, and including many of the major charitably involved Jews in Orange County. And I made a comment as we were about to sit down, who's going to be singing Kol Nidre? Because the only time you saw that many Jews in a theater was on the high holidays. And I got a very big laugh. And I'm sure the vast majority of the audience had seen the play previously. And of course, the movie with that audience was very, very popular. And most of the people had paid a premium because it was a charity opening. So they really wanted to enjoy it. But it is a remarkable achievement. It really does cover a lot of things and raises a lot of issues. And Norm, or whoever it was that said it, it was Tova, in addition to Japanese, they showed it to us in Dutch, and they showed it to us in Thai. It is really a universal story because the universal is in the particular. You can't take bland people and have intense emotions very often or very well. There's exceptions, certainly. But there you have it.
I wanted to add that Norm and I saw the Yiddish language production in New York.
That Joel Gray directed, it was fabulous. There were super titles, so those who did not understand the Yiddish could look and see. The translation was a very well done translation. And it was just a terrific production. Many of you know that Joel Gray is Mickey Katz's son. So Yiddish was, even though he's not fluent in Yiddish, Yiddish was no stranger to him.
I wanted to add one thing I noticed in the documentary, and that a few people in the documentary commented on in terms of casting Chaim Topol in the movie as compared to Zero Mostel, was that the age of the actor reflects or transforms something about the character. The first time, I mean, when I saw Fiddler on stage and I was a kid and it was at the Dorothy Chandler or whatever, I don't even remember who it was, but I imagined Tevye as being my grandfather's age. And then in the movie, they made a deliberate choice about casting a younger man as Tevye. And I really felt that in the Yiddish language production. The actor playing Tevye in the Yiddish language production was quite young and really had a very different kind of energy. The last few stage productions I saw here, when Fiddler would show up for, 4 or 5 days and then move on.
Or at your high school.
Was
with Theodore Bickel, who by the time he was playing Tevye was himself an older man.
Well, by the time you saw him playing Tevye.
Yes, by the time I saw him play Tevye, he was definitely an older man. And it changes something about the tenor of the story for me.
Now, I think Herschel Bernardi's son, Michael Bernardi, is in that production that you were talking about. So it's come full circle. He played it on Broadway. You know,
many of the actors who were in Fiddler on the Roof, the Yiddish production, had been in many cases their same roles, sometimes in other roles, in other professional productions, not in Yiddish. Most of them in English.
And most of them learned their lines without being Yiddish speakers themselves.
Right. There were a few Yiddish speakers, but many of them were not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Errol Hackner, then the Hoppenstands, and then we'll circle around for repeats. Welcome, Errol.
Hi. So what I wanted to say was in this movie, we see Topol as the stereotypical Ashkenazi father. His breakthrough in movies was as a stereotypical Mizrahi father. He made a movie called Salah Shabbati, which was his name, and it related to, rather than leaving a country, arriving in a country, arriving in Israel where the system let him down. And Salah Shabbati is probably a riff on Slicha Shabbati, I'm sorry I came. And it's a wonderful movie. It's not a musical. I wonder if Vered could comment on it.
On Salah Shabbati?
On Salah Shabbati, I think it'd be wonderful for you to show it and talk about it.
You know, I showed it in Orange County when there was only Hill 24 Doesn't Answer and Salah Shabbati were like the only Israeli films we were showing at the time.
Errol, let me interject here for a second. If I remember correctly, the movie Salah, that's the one you're talking about?
Salah Shabbati.
Salah Shabbati.
I believe there's a scene in that movie that just sticks out in my mind where he puts up a sign that says dedicated by so-and-so, and they drive up and they take pictures, and then those people leave. He takes the sign down, he puts a new sign up, dedicated by whoever, and those people come back. Are we talking about the same movie?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. Vered, I'd love your comments.
I know you do. I'm going to. So first of all, Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov, and thank you, Michael, for all these beautiful movies that you're bringing into our life. So about the movie that we saw, I would like to comment something, then I will answer to our dear friend Earl shortly. So watching this movie, I was struck by Jerome Robbins. And I was thinking about artists. What makes an artist bloom, flourish, come to a point that we don't think about it, that is exceptional. And I was looking at 3 short examples. One is that when he went to a to a wedding, and he saw people, Orthodox people, dancing, you know, with enthusiasm and with a lot of happiness. And he commented about this, and he said, I saw these people dancing with the commune with God, and it shows this commune through their movement. And that brought him, when he did the play, to do the dance with the Hasidim, with the wine on their head, this type of dance. The other example which I like is that all the participants in the play, there were 40 of them, they all have names, and they were not anonymous people. And a name is something to a person. It's not you, but it's a name. And he was thinking about putting things in circle. This was his idea, also from West Side Story. And there's a lot of circle dancing and circle, even the place, the so-called the shtetl there was in a circle, and then each window was attached to the other window. There was no privacy, but they were all one unit all together. And then the very sad part in which he went to see the shtetl that his family came. I forgot this moment. I wrote it down, but anyway, he came, and what he saw only tombstones or names, and there was nobody there. There was silence. So all this put in him as an artist a very special feeling, mood that created all this beautiful play with being very original at the time that it was put together. And I learned a lot. And I think that one of my comments, a few movies, is that I learned from all those movies, and I want to thank you for that. Now I want to answer briefly to Earl. The movie Salah Shabati is talking about the immigration of people from Morocco in the very beginning of the establishment of the country, in which they were put in transition camps called Ma'abarot. And it shows the differences between the Sfaradim, those that came from Morocco, and the Ashkenazim, or the veterans that were living in a kibbutz. And they already, established a kibbutz versus people living in poverty in a ma'abara when it rains. But there is a hope, there is a dream, and the dream is that they will build for them a shikun, a permanent housing. And there is all kinds of fun things that only Ephraim Kishon was able, he wrote this play. He was able to point out those, we think they were funny, but they were kind of sarcastic kind of thing that he showed about the life in those days. When we came to Israel in 1950 from Romania, my parents, myself, and my younger sister, we also lived in a transition camp like this in Haifa. It was the biggest ma'abara, and from there, people were transferred to what they have. Now, the scene that my friend Norm remember is a very funny thing that we were looking, the state of Israel was looking in those days for American people to come and contribute money. And so they came, they were fancy with a taxi, and one name was Berenbaum, and Mr. and Mrs. Berenbaum came, and thank you very much, and they left. Once they left, another taxi came. Quickly, they changed the sign. Now we're the Cogans. Hello, the Cogans. Thank you for your contribution. And then they left, and then the next one comes. So this is Ephraim Kishon humor, who was also an important figure in Israeli art.
Thank
I
you.
can say more, but I can call you, Earl, and we can talk about it. Okay.
Mike Krzyzewski should have come. I'd like to see them write that sign quickly.
Yes. Okay.
I want to say a couple of things quickly that you had mentioned about the question about the artist, the mind of the artist. You should watch All That Jazz with Roy Scheider.
Yes, yes.
Because when I think of Jerome Robbins, I often think of Bob Fosse. You know, there's a certain feeling, the two of them, that intensity and that craziness of creativity is one piece. The thing you mentioned, it was so poignant about circles and about how in the end, when they left, that circle was finally broken.
Yes,
which,
exactly.
You know,
and also, if I can say just one, like, you know, at this time he was interrogated, he was questioned by the committee about giving names, so, you know, being all of this. So all of this, a lot of emotions in one person. That definitely, it shows his creativity and unique things and approach to things.
Yeah. You know, one other thing we haven't mentioned, someone put it in the chat, and I just wanted to remind you, one of the interesting asides to the film, you remember the clip you saw of Menachem Mendel of the Sholem Aleichem, the original matchmaker, was clearly not very flattering at all. You know, that's putting it mildly. I mean,
to put it
scoundrel,
mildly, you're right.
is what he was. So yeah, that's a sort of an interesting piece, you know, from where this came from, the characters.
Okay, it is 8:41. Michael still has a video to show, so we're going to go around again. I'm going to have to ask you to please limit your comments to as quickly as you can so we can get out of here by 9 o'clock. And we'll start again with the Culkins.
Okay, I'll be very quick. What I wanted to talk about was Austin Pendleton. So when I saw him in the film, I didn't know, how did he get here? And he was model in the original Broadway house. And what I know him from is the drunk, crazy lawyer from My Cousin Vinny. And I said, what? How is this guy in Fiddler on the Roof? Anyway, that was a revelation.
All right, thank you. Next, Tova.
Okay, this is actually from what I forgot to say the first time. One of the things I really appreciated was the commentary of the documentary, the interpretive commentary, because we had just watched Fiddler before we watched the documentary. And I really appreciated that it emphasized for me in a way that hadn't quite hit me when I watched it, the degree to which it was the women who were the revolutionaries. And in particular, the eldest daughter, because her manner was so sort of meek and not very confrontational, that I didn't read it that way. But there was a comment in the documentary about how when she insists on her choice, you know, to her father, that's really the turning point of the play. That's where it all changes. And I just really hadn't gotten that. I saw it in the two other daughters, but not as much with her, but he was absolutely right. So that was wonderful. I really appreciated that. And then responding, I think, to Paula and Mark, or a comment about whether there was fiddler music at Nathan's wedding. No, but Fiddler did come in, because I had a conversation with Nathan's bride, Maya, converted. So her family was not very conversant with Jewish wedding customs. And I was talking with one of her aunts later in the evening, and we were talking about Ketzad Marakdim, when we did the dancing at the beginning, the dancing for the bride with all kinds of shtick and things. And she was quelling. She really loved it. It was beautiful. She was really enjoying it. And she says, but I knew about that because I'd watched Fiddler. So she understood this idea of dancing before the bride. So that's it.
Okay, next, Joel Warren, please.
Wait, before Joel goes, Alan, to something you said about Austin Pendleton, you look and you think, how could he be in this? Did you notice Leonard Fry in this? Do you remember how Leonard Fry made his name? Boys in the Band.
Oh, okay.
Way back when I saw him, that was the first thing I thought, aside from Madison High School in Brooklyn, but that's for another night.
That was our arch enemy.
Exactly, mine too.
Our single arch enemy, James Madison.
Okay.
And Jamie Moskowitz. Boo.
Joel Warren, I'm sorry, we couldn't help ourselves.
That's okay. Salak Shabati, wonderful film, even if you don't know the social satire part of it. It's just a very funny film. To me, what's amazing is Topol is 29 years old when he made that movie. He's in full Tevye outfit with a beard. I mean, he looks like he does in Fiddler on the Roof at 29 years old. Salak Shabati. And I also, last comment, was very interested that even in all of these foreign productions, they had the same costume for Tevye. They didn't change it to reflect their own nationality. They did it authentically, and it's still related. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Fredmans, Howard and Essa, please. Unmute.
You're muted.
There you go.
Okay, so I just want to say that I have never seen the play until very recently. But growing up in South Africa, we were so proud to hear the music of Fiddler on the Roof. And we all knew the songs because we had the record. We played the tape in our cars. Like it reminded me of that film we saw about the Air Force in Israel, like a sense of immense pride that, Yiddish theater. But I also want to say another thing. If you read the real story of Tevye, it's actually a very sad story. It's not at all like the production. And, his wife dies, two of his daughters die. It's really a sad, sad story. And the last thing I want to say is Lin-Manuel Miranda used to be in a Jewish a cappella group, and he sang at bar mitzvahs, and he knows a lot of songs of our tradition, which is sort of fascinating in itself. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful documentary.
Gabriella? Got to unmute.
Gabriella.
Okay. That one of the things that strikes me, and despite the carping of people who insist on political correctness of 2022, I feel that this whole show is completely timeless. And, this is not dated. We watch it today and you have the same feeling about it as you watched it when it first came out. Whereas many musicals, and they're beautiful musicals, and I love them, but when you watch them, you find them kind of dated. And this is a musical that has wonderful songs that you can sing, which I don't care for musicals that have very little music in them, really. Right. That you can't go out humming any song. And you can hum every song there. And it just, it's serious and funny at the same time and completely timeless.
Okay, Paula and Mark, can you make it quick? We're running late here.
So I also, I really like that everybody had a name. That was incredibly poignant to me. I love the Lin-Manuel Miranda wedding to life, L'chaim. And then I just kept going back to, what was the other film we saw where there was a matchmaker, right? And he was...
Crossing Delancey?
No, in Haifa. And there were little people. There was maybe it's a different Israeli film that I saw, but it's just the matchmaker was, this young guy had his first job was being he was trailing people for the matchmaker to find out if they were good matches or not. Was the guy married? Was he not? Did we not watch that film? It was another Israeli film that I saw, but it was,
Shtisel, maybe Shtisel is what you saw with the matchmaker, no? Okay.
So I think it was maybe an Avi Nesher film that I saw recently. So, but it was just interesting because the guy had a side business, and I wouldn't say he was a scoundrel. It was just like trying to make, life after the Holocaust in Israel, trying to make ends meet. But there was the matchmaking piece and that whole feminist piece about where the young woman said, I get to decide, I get a love match, not an arranged match. And and I think that is a very universal thing. I think that in many cultures where there are arranged marriage, over time, somebody, I read an article and, on the Saturday paper, they have those love columns where this woman writes, this Indian woman writes, a South Asian Indian writes that she wakes up one day and she realizes this arranged marriage, she actually loves her husband. And, they found deep love. And I think that's part of the cultural appeal internationally.
Didn't we even see Bend It Like Beckham? They showed a clip in this movie,
yes,
right?
Yes, what you do for your daughters. Wasn't that great?
It was fabulous.
I think I've watched that movie a million times with my kids. So.
Yeah. Very
I thought it was, behind the scenes for me was watching how they were writing it and putting it together, and how they were staging it and setting it forth, and how they were making the changes. And the dynamic with Jerome Robbins was just, it taught me stuff I didn't know that went on behind the scenes. So thank you for sharing that. That was really poignant.
Okay, thank you. Let me just put a couple of quick funny bullet points in here before we move on. You jogged my memory, Paula. I found it kind of funny in that scene with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his father, that they kept pronouncing the word L'chaim when it's L'chaim. Okay, you would think that Lin-Manuel Miranda would know how to pronounce that word. And then we mentioned earlier that Topol was saying that he had a toothache. If you want to add to the trivia list, Gene Kelly famously remarked that when he shot the title number from Singing in the Rain, he had 101-degree fever. So add that to your trivia list.
And
Michael?
they actually shot that for 3 days, Singing in the Rain.
Or do you want to show this video?
Yeah, let me just set up one last thing for tonight. You talked about behind the scenes. I want to show you the first play that I ever went to, the first musical my sister took me to. And to this day, it's always been, for me personally, the greatest musical I ever saw. The music stands by itself. It was done by more Jews than you can count, but actually you saw 4 of them in this particular thing. Jerome Robbins and Hal Prince, and they had a clip with Stephen Sondheim and Leonard Bernstein. And the play is West Side Story, okay? In 1982, since you love Jerome Robbins, they did a revival. And I want to show you a rehearsal from that, a small piece. And here's the beauty of it. 2 things. First of all, like Fiddler, when you hear the music, when I hear the music to West Side Story, it's always as good as it gets. But secondly, the original cast from Broadway will come through it. I want you to watch for 3 people. Michael Callan, Mickey Callan, if you remember who he was. He played Riff on Broadway. Carol Lawrence, who played Maria. And then you'll see Chita Rivera, who was the forerunner to the next 2 Anitas who won the Academy Award. So this is the 1982 Jerome Robbins revival on Broadway of West Side Story. And this is what it takes to put it on. This is a small clip from the rehearsal. You'll see the new folks, and then you'll see the originals. Just enjoy it. Sit back. How glamorous rehearsals are.
you will protect him. Then you were set with the capital J, which you'll never forget. Till they caught you away with your jet. You stay up
pretty and witty and bright, and I pity any girl who isn't me tonight. La 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 la. I feel charming, oh so charming. It's alarming how charming I feel, and so pretty that I hardly believe I'm that, you kill your brother, forget that boy and find another, one of your own kind, stick to your own kind. It isn't true, not for me, it's true for you, not for me. I hear your words and in my head I know they're smart, but my heart, a boy like that would kill your brother, forget that boy and find another, one of your own, and stick to your own
Mambo! Mambo! Go!
Arms up and down.
Little brain fart.
Tonight won't be just any Tonight there will be no morning star. Tonight, tonight, I'll see my love tonight, and for us stars will shine where they are.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all.
Folks, the next time you go to the theater, I want you to remember how much hard work goes into all of this and how brilliant all of these creative people really were. You know, it's a nice change of pace from everything we see and what's going on in the world. It's okay to take some time out and just enjoy ourselves, sing and listen to music. So on that note, I wish you all a good night. I'll see you in a couple of weeks in Fanny's Journey. Stay safe, stay out of trouble, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
Happy Passover.
Happy Passover. Everybody.